How you doing, Mr. Dries?
Not so bad. How are you?
Oh my God, I see the garbage can burning behind you.
I call this one 2020.
Hello, Piedmont Hills High School. This is Polly's podcast, The Legends Weekly Quarantine Podcast, here to give the Piedmont Hills community new perspectives during this time. My name is Victor.
And I'm Joanne. So today we're going to explore the perspectives of teachers with a bigger emphasis on AP teachers.
With school itself being canceled, all classes have been moved online, something that has never happened before. The people arguably most affected by this drastic change are the teachers, who now have to accommodate for lost class time and different teaching environments.
So joined with us today are two very cool teachers and yourselves.
I'm Miss Lee, and I teach AP Lang and ERWC.
Jason Dries, AP Bio.
Okay.
So we're going to move on to some questions for you guys. So first question, so how is quarantine going for both you guys, and how have you guys been keeping yourself busy?
I feel like I'm busier than ever because I used to just never cook for my family. So now I'm cooking, and also Ed's really busy. My husband's really busy, so he's probably busier than when he was going to work. So just a lot. The day is just really hectic and busy, and I feel like there's no weekends because every day is kind of like you wake up, repeat, and then I'm also teaching. So I don't really have time to be bored. I kind of want to be bored, but not really getting the opportunity to do that.
We're bored out of our skulls.
Really?
Oh my God. We've covered everything in AP for the year. College Board cut the last 2 units out of the test. So I was actually done anyway, except for ecology. I was done with content, so we're just reviewing. So I'm barely even needed at this point, which is nice. I'm trying to send them funny pictures and llamas and video reviews for College Board. We're coping with this. I'm playing a lot of Xbox with Vasquez and Aberly.
Heard about that.
We play Borderlands, maybe not every night, but 2-3 times a week at least. We can't get together to meet and play D&D anymore, so we have to at least meet online.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what would you say is the hardest part about teaching at home?
I think that lack of interaction. I mean, you guys had me for AP, so it's really hard to get you guys to participate when I'm in the room staring at you. So to do it online, sometimes it's just a box with someone's name. I don't even know if the kid's there, to be honest, because sometimes they log in and they kind of walk out of the room. So participation has probably been the most challenging. For AP Lang, it looks like they're only going to be doing rhetorical analysis, and they're not going to be doing anything else. There's not going to be a multiple choice, so it's only a 45-minute essay. So it's kind of like what Mr. Dry says. It's a very focused skill that I need to review. I don't have to go over argument or synthesis or memorize all those vocabulary for multiple choice. But because essays require a lot of practice, we're doing a lot more lessons outside of just our scheduled Zoom meetings. We're still writing essays. I'm still grading, giving them feedback. So it's really great that the school paid for turnitin.com, because then I can use turnitin.com and then I can respond to them that way. So the fact that our district and our school was pretty tech prepared before this hit actually makes the other parts of it a little bit easier. But I think that just the interaction part is really hard, and not everybody's turning in work because they feel like because of the grade floor. So that's kind of challenging. With AP, it's not as bad because I think kids kind of know that they need to, really be on board to take the exam. But Jason, how many kids in your, what percentage? So I have out of 60 kids, 53 taking the AP exam. So how many do you, what's your percentage of kids taking the exam?
I actually made it, I provided a carrot and stick model. If they take the AP test at the end of the year, the real one, they don't have to take my final.
Mm-hmm.
At the very best, we'd take, at the very worst, they take half of it.
Mm-hmm.
The multiple choice part, because the essays are just impossible to grade quickly.
Mm-hmm.
This year, obviously, they get to skip it entirely. And since they had to have it paid for by October, all but 2 kids were taking the test. I checked it the day, and I don't think anyone's dropped that I saw. Maybe a couple kids. And that's fine. If they don't feel prepared, then I don't want them to take it.
I feel like I have some kids who regret not signing up for it because they're like, oh, it's just one essay. I feel like I could do that, but then I didn't pay for it. So now it's too late for me. So but I mean, it really is only 7 kids. I mean, out of 60, 53 of them signed up, so I do think that there's a level of worry, but the good news is because we just practiced for the SATs, which is a rhetorical analysis essay. So I got to do a run through of that with them while we were still at school. But now it almost feels like we gained some momentum in terms of argument. And I'm sure, like, maybe did you start your ecology unit at all, or you didn't get a chance to?
No, we were going to do it sometime close to spring break.
Okay, so part of it, I feel like I'm throwing away almost all those skills that we gained because I'm just like, don't think about argument because it's going to confuse you. You just only want to focus on rhetorical analysis. So there's a little bit of sadness that we had worked so hard to build these skills. And now it's like, oh, we're going to take a break from it. And I don't know when. I mean, I'm sure they're going to have to do argument when they get to college, or we'll revisit it again. But it's kind of sad when kids were I felt like they were growing, and then now we're going to have to kind of, put a stop to that. And I think that's just kind of the sad thing about distance learning in general, is that towards the end of the year is sort of the culmination of everything you learned, and you kind of have these epiphanies, not necessarily academic epiphanies, but just kind of social, mental, remember, like, didn't you guys feel like at the end of last year after Lang, you just thought a little bit deeper, a little bit more mature, like after the debate unit and all that stuff? So all those things are not happening, and I don't know how to facilitate that online. I mean, maybe if I have more time, I could figure it out, but as of right now, that makes me sad, not related to AP, but just the interruption in learning, so to speak.
To answer your question, the biggest problem with remote learning is apathy.
Yeah. I
know what I would do as a teenager if I was, literally just let loose, like we all were. And that's what I think a lot of us are seeing. Mm-hmm. I can't blame you guys for it, because I know what I'd do. Your grades aren't going to go down. So what's the downside for you guys? Come on. So, I get it. The problem is what I'm worried about, and this has just come up. Funk did an interview the other day to the Mercury News, and he's putting out a bunch of possibilities. Nobody knows what's going to happen next year. This has literally never happened. So these are just guesses right now. But Funk put out some of his projections or guesses, and he said we could be like remote learning. Next year, best case scenario, we go to school 5 days a week, just like regular. But I think a relatively probable scenario is going to be, according to him, is that you guys go like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Tuesday and Thursday are like at home, or the other way around. So the part that scares me a little bit is if we do that, trying to tell these kids, all that like dumb stuff we did last year, the stuff that really didn't count negatively for you, well, now it does. So we don't want you to like develop these bad habits of like apathy and not wanting to do this stuff. And then next year, like, well, I'm just going to start skipping these things because it's all remote. No, next year you're going to start getting zeros if we have to go back and do it.
Like junior high to high school, right? Kids are like, oh my God, junior high, you could totally be a goofball and still graduate and go to high school. And then they go to high school and they're like, oh no, you can't do that, right?
Yep. So we just don't want this, and don't get me wrong, apathy, my apathy can outshine the sun most days. So I understand. But I'd hate to see all these kids starting to like tank in August because they're just spending the day off. And I don't know what to do on my days off other than Xbox.
And I also think like your perspective is probably a little bit different than mine, because like for AP, I still have pretty much 100% kids show up. Like once in a while I get one kid missing, but for the most part, 100% kids show up. And I would say, maybe like a good chunk of 40% are still doing their work and turning it in. But for ERWC, I have 70% show up, which is not bad, which is pretty decent. But I have like out of 90 kids, I have 5 kids turning work in. less than 5 kids or consistently, and one once in a while, right? And so that's going to be interesting, because if let's say I didn't have this AP exam happening in May, I don't even think I would be getting what I'm getting right now with my AP students. And then I think what I'm seeing with my regular students is probably what I would see with, the rest of my students. What about you, Jason?
I'm getting at least 8 out of 96 response for my AP Bio kids.
Yeah.
But a lot of their grades are where they, almost where they want them to be. So that's fine.
Yeah.
What about you two, Victor and Joanne?
My grades are okay. I just wanted to ask that, are you guys worried that students aren't going to be prepared for next school year, or the AP test, because of this whole distance learning thing and the whole apathy thing?
The AP test is different because College Board has specifically reduced it down to 45 minutes. And in terms of AP Bio, and I assume they're doing this across the board, it's two questions. They're publishing 1 million reviews. They're literally telling you for AP Bio, what kind of questions are going to be on the test. Like, here's some examples of them. I have this very strong suspicion that it's going to be 2 questions the kids have never seen before, but I think they're going to be graded extremely easily. I think there's like 200,000 kids that take the AP Bio test, and they don't want to hear 100,000 kids all of a sudden worldwide say, we took off school. I didn't have the means. I didn't have internet. Worst case scenario, I couldn't even watch these things. So how come I got a 1 on your test when it wasn't my fault to not be prepared? So I have a feeling that a lot of kids are going to pass this year, as a one-time look the other way sort of thing.
And I also think that students are really resilient, and this might not be the most PC or kosher thing to say, but I've had some amazing teachers, people who've really inspired me, and I've had some terrible teachers. And, in my class, I've told you guys, I've had teachers who basically the way to get an A is don't bother me for the semester, right? And then if you don't bother me, then you can get an A. And I'm going to tell you, I turned out okay. A lot of people turned out okay. I think students are way more resilient than you think. I think your brain will bounce back. It will take some time. I think that mental agility, you kind of require keep thinking for it to be as sharp as it needs to be, but it'll bounce back pretty quickly. And I think once you guys are challenged again, and once you get to where you need to get to, you'll be amazed at how much prior knowledge and how much skill that you have. It does take a little bit. Just like riding a bike, right? If you haven't ridden a bike in a year and then you get on the bike, you're kind of wobble a little bit and you're like, oh my God, am I going to be able to do this? And then after a few minutes, sort of your memory kind of takes over, and then you're able to do it again. So I do think there's going to be a period where kids are going to have to reacquaint themselves with being academically accountable and being in a strenuous environment that requires a lot of hard work and dedication. But I think they'll bounce back quicker than y'all think. I don't think this is going to cause. Is it going to cause permanent emotional damage? I think that's probably the bigger question. But I think in terms of your ability to perform well in school, Mr. Dries, you have brilliant students. I have brilliant students. I have no doubt they're going to bounce back very quickly.
We also very specifically at our department head meeting had to discuss I think this was department head, one of the Zoom meetings that are all kind of blurring together right now. We had to discuss specifically, English, most specifically the math teachers. No one's learning math right now. You can't learn math through Zoom. You can't, Kwong can threaten you all he wants, but it is impossible for you guys to open the book and go, well, let's learn how to integrate right now, or whatever you do in calculus. So no one can learn. So we're going to have a lot of kids, science, English, math, whatever, the classes that build on each other. We're going to have a ton of kids next year who arrive in August that cannot do chapter 1 in the next, level up of a class. And all of us as teachers, math especially, are going to have to suck it up, not penalize you guys for that, because that would be wrong. It's not your fault. It's not our fault. We had to quarantine and review a lot. I'm going to have to review a lot of chemistry with AP Bio next year. or sorry, maybe even teach chemistry instead of review it. And math is going to have to adjust to, and English is going to have to realize those English 2 kids didn't finish English 1, the English 3 didn't finish English 2. So we have to play our part on this. We're trying to tell all the teachers to
I think just
nice.
being nice, and I think also open-minded. I mean, if you guys think about when you guys entered a 3 AP, it was like you've been taking high school English, you know, for 2 years, and then all of a sudden you're going to go into an English class that's college level, but harder than college level, because you're really just kind of learning how to write in 45 minutes. I mean, when you go to college, you get time to do a research paper, you get time to do those things. I mean, it's in no scenario do you do that except for a college board AP exam. Does that make sense? And some of you ramped up a lot faster. Some of you started getting really good grades right out of the gate because you're just really naturally good writers. And some of you, you know, took a while to get there. But I think with teachers focusing on basic skills and really kind of being explicit in terms of what are the building blocks, I think the thing that frustrates me, and I think Mr. Dries will agree with me, is kind of like this passing the buck that sometimes we get in education, which is your teacher last year didn't work you hard enough, and then this is why, you're, you know, so it's not my problem. And I actually think, I know for a fact that I go over things with you guys, and guess what happens when you get to lit? You're like, I don't remember anything Miss Lee taught me. You know what I mean? And then Mr. Dries, like, I mean, I'm sure like Mr. Dries hears Mr. Brown, what did AP Elaine teachers like cover with that? They forget everything over the summer. I'm like, I know I did that. And then so I just think y'all all eventually get to that place, right? I think math is a little bit harder, like you said, because it's like a building block type of class. But I really think it's going to be okay. But I'm also like one of those, like, you know, optimistic, you know, half full type of people. But I feel, I mean, I'm not really worried about that. Or I mean, are you worried about that?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Joanne.
So how do you guys feel about the software available to aid in distance learning? And do you guys have any tips for students for studying at home?
No. The software is what it is. I mean, Zoom's had a bunch of lawsuits, and like Google can't use it. And I think the New York school system isn't allowing it. I don't see the need to. I don't see too many people trying to break into our stuff. I mean, it's English class. This isn't, you know, it's not like we're transferring credit card numbers or something. So I think that's a pretty low priority. So Zoom is what it is. It's not perfect. We've all had to deal with this, like what Peggy said earlier about kids not showing their face. I think that's a generational gap, because when you're old like me, you show your face, or it's like considered rude. And I think a lot of us have to realize that you're not doing it to be rude. You're doing it because you're in your pajamas, or something. So we have to remember that you're not trying to be, you know, rude about it. You're just, I guess that's, you know, what teens do.
No, I have like one kid, and I wish he would just block himself. Like, he shows up and this is like his blanket is like here, you know, and you just see his head. And then every once in a while he'll back up, and then you'll see like the blanket go down. And you're like, put a shirt on, dude. Just, you just like, you really and it's a 1 p.m. class. So I'm like, but I'm glad he's participating, asking questions. So I don't really want to say anything. And I really just kind of see this with the blanket. So it's not offensive to me. But a lot of the kids are like, I have a pimple, you know, they'll like send me a private message. I'll be like, I have a really like bad acne right now, so I'm still here, you know. And so some of them, and also like a lot of kids are just really anxious. Were we this anxious? I don't remember us being this anxious as a generation.
No.
I feel like the kids are more anxious nowadays.
Well, Peggy, you grew up in probably a pushy household, but I mean,
I did.
I didn't. So I didn't have some tiger mom pushing me to go to UC Berkeley, or else I would be disinherited or.
No, she was just like, I'll kill myself because of the shame. I can't face people.
My parents were like, hey, we want you to go to college. Okay, cool. I'll go to whatever. I went to.
Those were my in-laws. My in-laws were like that. They're like, if you go to college, it's good. And I'm like, oh.
So
Other people
I
did?
didn't live under this stress. I had classmates that did. Some of the super kids, sure.
Yeah.
I never lived like that. It's hard to it's not hard to understand. It's just it took me a while to relate to this in these kids, these high stressed kids.
Yeah.
So do
But
you guys think if this like pandemic happened in your day, like the situation would be completely different?
It would
There
because we
would.
didn't have the internet.
we didn't have the
Oh
internet. We
my
didn't
God,
have
I guess we'd be like
technology.
writing letters and sending them in or something, like with stamps and stuff, or
Yeah,
God, I don't know, passing out walkie-talkies or something.
maybe.
I
Yeah,
don't know
'cause we
what
didn't
we'd
have the
do.
technology. Like, did you have beepers like when you were in college? That was like the thing, right? People having beepers. And we
I'm a
all look
little,
like drug dealers with
I'm
like
a
five
little older than
beepers.
you, so we didn't have beepers in college.
Okay, so I had beepers and I had like people who were wealthy, they had like a cell phone that was like the size of this water bottle that they would
Oh
like
yeah, they're
carry
bricks.
around. So like this whole new thing is like crazy to me. And so in some ways, I guess we're more fortunate, you know, because we have all this technology. But I also think the technology is what makes you guys more anxious and more disconnected and more socially unable to, like, for example, eye contact is something that every year gets worse and worse. I'm sure when you guys talk to sophomores or freshmen, it's weird. They can't look at you. Like looking at your face is like so painful for them. They get just like, you're so anxious and squirrely about it. And I think that's going to get worse with all this tech stuff, that it's, you know, it's kind of allowed us to communicate more, but we're communicating differently. And then the way we interact is changing, which is maybe causing some anxiety, like social anxiety, that they don't want to show their face, or, you know, even new teachers. I don't know if like you guys have newer teachers, but I have like younger teachers that I mentor at San Jose State, and I'll be like, you know what, can I just call you? Because going over this lesson plan is so hard, text messaging. And they're like, I have phone anxiety. When I talk to people, it makes me nervous. What they like to do is they like to like edit what they're going to respond before they send it. Does that make sense? When you're talking on the phone, it's this immediacy, and they're like, I get kind of panicky. So Peggy, can we just like message back and forth? I'm like, I'm old. This is really hard. Okay, fine. I'll just keep messaging you because that's helpful. But these are people in their 20s. They're not, you know, like they're 20, 21 years old, you know, in college, freshmen, you know, to first year of grad school, and they don't know how to respond because everything's curated, and there's a time lapse because they have to review it before they send it out, you know. And I think that's interesting. Do you get that with the youngsters, Jason?
I teach AP. My class is a constellation on a year-to-year basis of psychoses, anxieties. We are the island of broken toys. So
Okay.
I have learned to identify a lot of those and roll with some of them. I
Yeah.
understand anxiety, especially a lot. I understand anxiety a lot more, especially these last 3 years now that it's happening to me.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different world, and I never thought I would, like, I just always thought my parents were old. They couldn't understand me. You know, there was such a generational gap, and now I'm the old person that doesn't understand young people, because I'm like, how would you even think that? You're from a different universe, you know? And then
Yeah,
Victor often tells me, he's like, Miss Lee, you're just old. You just don't know.
that only
I'm
gets
like,
better.
okay, I don't know. I just don't know. I try, but I don't, like, I can't compute. Like I literally, what? You know, and then he goes, no, that's just young people. Just
Just
don't
gotta
know.
keep rolling with it.
But see, Mr. Dries is young. He you know what keeps him young, and you're gonna love this, Victor, is those memes. He is an avid lover of memes.
That's what I'm looking up right now.
He's looking at
All
memes.
my Star Trek groups, my useless memes, unpopular, unuseless 3Us. I can't remember the name of the group.
Oh,
I was just about to save one and send it to Abraham and Vasquez.
Keeps you young, keeps you young.
alright.
So
Keeps you dumb, that's for sure.
no, I
Um,
love them. They're just so entertaining. You know, I send them to De La Rosa and Flora sometimes, and they'll send them to me, and then we just, you know, have such a good laugh.
alright. So, how are you guys finding out about news, like school announcements? Are you guys finding them the same time as the students are, or are you guys like, or do you guys find out like a day or two before us?
Once in a while, we get especially as a department head, we get a little heads up in a meeting. Like Davis will say, "Hey, I had a principals meeting today.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to announce this like soon." Sometimes soon means we're hearing about it the day before. Sometimes soon meant I'm going to release this, or Funk is going to release this, like that we were off the rest of the year or whatever. And sometimes soon means literally when she says it, I feel my phone vibrate, and 5 minutes later,
There it is.
it's there. So we don't have too much advance warning on almost anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy I got another face mask picture. I made an assignment. I copied Aberley's assignment to make your own face mask and send a picture of it to me for credit. Might as well be something useful.
See, I should learn how to sew, but no. I ordered a Hello Kitty one, but it was polyester, and I thought that would be too itchy, so I had to cancel my order. So I have to find a cotton Hello Kitty mask. How about, Mr. Dries, you make me one?
I only use N95 masks from my classroom.
Oh, you had them? You have them?
Yes.
Okay.
I brought home N95 masks, 100% ethanol alcohol in case I just needed it. I brought home a bunch of my hand sanitizer, a billion gloves. I brought home 3 EMT jackets in case I have to impersonate one someday. You never know.
I have 2 cans of Clorox wipes in my house right now.
I have so many of those.
I
hoard them all the time. This is actually nothing new. I'm just mad that I can't have even more.
Okay. Joanne, would you like to ask the last question?
Were not useful.
We've already covered this, but for the school year, distance learning grades have been treated as extra credit.
Yeah.
So if this thing continues on next school year, how do you guys think the grading system will change?
I don't think the grade system is going to change at all from what we normally have.
Yeah.
If we go to, if we're at 5 days distance learning, I mean, literally no one in school, I think we're going to have to treat it like regular school, and you'll just be submitting, pictures of your homework or something to us. I assume that, if you don't do it, you're going to get a 0. I can't solve the technology problems though. Our district does have more Chromebooks than students. So we can literally give every student a Chromebook who needs one. We have been already. It's the internet. At Piedmont, I think we all enjoy some internet connectivity and don't have too many issues, but all of our schools don't have that.
But I think the state has given free internet for like these 2 months. Like if you don't have internet, you could call this thing and they will give you free internet. So I think if let's say next year we go to distance, I think there's going to be statewide
White? I'm sorry.
Statewide.
Oh, okay. I misheard you.
Statewide internet access for free, and I think the schools will provide the Chromebooks. I think the thing that kids can't use as an excuse, because this was kind of like the scrambling of last minute, is I'm working. Well, guess what? When you were at school, you couldn't be working at the Starbucks during 4th period. You were supposed to be at school, So I think next year, kind of the excuse of where, oh my God, because of equity, some kids are really helping their family during this time. Well, you're still a high school student. You're supposed to be at a certain amount of time legally at school. So I do think that in terms of attendance, it will be better. You'll still have class participation. However participation happened when we're in a classroom, I'm going to require that, hey, if you don't ask this many questions during the semester, I'm going to take out your participation points, which is part of your test grade. Do you guys kind of remember that? All those things I call on you. If you're not ready, well, you're going to lose some points. Once that accountability piece is back, like Mr. Dries said, once we start grading like we normally do, and then it's not this optional or extra credit or whatever teachers want to call it, I think the learning is going to be online, but the point system will be the same and the accountability will be the same, and kind of the reasoning of why not to do that. I do think our state is prepared to combat that with either free internet and also computers for kids.
Okay, so now we're going to go on a small break.
Welcome to Performance with Petey. I'm your host, Jose Flores Jimenez, and I will be reading a few written pieces submitted by students. Today, our first piece is a journal entry written by senior student Andy Doan. This piece can be found in the March issue of the Legend newspaper. The entry is titled, Birthday in Quarantine. Journal entry, March 17th. The sun was out today. It hasn't been out for the last several days, so it felt especially warm when I stepped out into the sunlight today for driving practice, its rays kissing my skin as if reassuring me that things will be okay. Birds were chirping too. Their songs filled the morning while I was replying to my first birthday wishes. Life will move on, in spite of us humans. These last 2 weeks have felt like a fever dream. I went to school and I floated through my classes and through the halls, hearing all the hysteria and anxiety, taking it all in and internalizing it. When I got home, the same panic was all over the news and social media. We're living in a very uncertain time, a very messy, very uncertain time, where the days are long and the future is an unknown. The world is not ending.
And we're back. Since this is the first time in history that all students are practicing distance learning, we can be sure there will be many more changes in the future. So in the second part of the podcast, we want to focus more on what you guys think the future is going to look like in education after the quarantine ends. Yeah.
Oh boy. After this quarantine ends, if it ever does, I keep reading about quarantines. I'm reading this new time, The Science of Epidemics. I'm just reading about Sweden's extraordinarily high death toll after deciding not to quarantine. Good choices. What's been told to us by a lot of folks I trust is it's going to happen again, or it could happen again, sorry.
Stop messing with Mother Nature.
So what happens is not every country is locking down, not every state is locking down, and we're only as strong as like the weakest link. I mean, I hate for these like trite sayings, but it's true in this case. If Mexico doesn't, if Canada doesn't, if Utah doesn't, whatever, and if we have traffic after this, before we get a vaccine, we're all have exactly of naive enough immune systems. So this could be a thing, and in you guys' lifetime, you could get the alert on the news that, okay, we're doing this again. And next time you'd be, crap, and same precautions, stay in your house, get your masks out. We'll all have a lot by then, I'm sure. And Clorox wipes and stuff. So I suspect this very, very well could happen at regular intervals in our future.
And I just think, I have like a sad analogy in some ways. It's to me, it's reminiscent of campus shootings. When we first had Columbine and when we first had these mass shootings, we were shocked by it, we were saddened, we were like, how could this happen? And then I just read the news. This was the first March where there was no campus shooting, I think, in the last 10 years or something like that. I can't remember the statistics. But then what happened was we just kind of got used to it, and then schools started to take the code red drill really seriously, because we realized there could be a shooter that could come on campus. And I think students are going to be, and teachers are going to be ready mentally to know that this could happen again. And then with the fact that if this is something that continuously is a trend in some ways, sadly we will persist and get used to it, and then education will be different than we've ever thought of, but then it will just become the new normal. Hopefully that it doesn't come to that. Hopefully, this is the pandemic. We've learned it. We've learned from it. We've learned to not mess with, certain habitats and animals, and, and know how to, be able to take these signs seriously, and make countries accountable, and so on and so forth. But you guys know humanity's stupid. So I don't know. I'm hopeful. But I do think, sadly, whatever happens, good or bad, we'll get used to it, and we will figure it out.
what we're also doing as teachers, I can't promise the entire staff, but I can promise, at least in our science meetings, we discuss this, and me personally, is we have to have a plan B. We weren't thinking about plan B when they said, hey, we're going to go home and for a week, 2 weeks, hey, maybe the rest of the year. None of us had any idea what to do. This is all practice.
Yeah.
Next year, if we ever have to make the announcement again, hey, we're going to take a week off, or we're going to do Tuesdays and Thursdays off, whatever. A lot of us are coming up with our game plans, so we can hit the ground running and have things to do. This summer is going to be a huge preparation summer for me. I'm making AP Bio able to be taught without me.
Yeah.
I'm recording every lecture, so I can, if I'm not there, if the kids can't, if we can't be there, whatever, we can. I can assign those. So I'm gonna, in theory, about 2 months from now, I'm gonna have an enormous YouTube channel, just full of things, and it's not very exciting things, but it will replace me in the classroom if needs be, and I can just click assign. 4.3 and 4.4 today.
But then like something that I was like thinking, and then I think Jason, you're going to be really great at answering this is, for science, it's so much part of that learning is the experience and the experimentation and the scientific process in those labs. I know Dave was really concerned, Mr. Vasquez was really concerned, how am I going to dissect the mink when we're not going to be dissecting the mink? And so that is something that, like, how do you still like have kids be able to learn those skills without the lab setting?
What we're going to do is, for instance, AP's cutting back to 1 hour next year anyway. So what I'm thinking about doing, someone suggested this today, and it was just, or last night, and it was like they said the right thing at the right time, and I thought that's what we're going to do. Flipping the classroom isn't quite the right phrase for it, but we're going to reserve our class time for labs. Mm-hmm. If we went to school Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can watch me talk online Tuesday and Thursday, but then show up on Friday or our one day together, our block schedule together, whatever it's going to be, and we can be ready to go. And we can Zoom meetings about, and I can have the stuff on me. This is what you're going to be using, and we can go over that stuff so that when we are together, they'll actually be ready to do the lab. So I'm kind of not inconvenienced in this in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. The logistics of it are kind of fun to plan.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm probably the most puzzled, or the concept I'm struggling with the most is kind of that dynamic of us being in the room, the energy. Like, for example, 7th period energy was very different than 6th period energy. And that energy kind of dictated, kind of how the class is run, and going online, how I think it's really good that this is happening second semester, because all those like interesting personalities are still interesting personalities when you're still online, but those were established in person. If we start out the school year that way, all those sort of, nuances and quirks, and, Jason, you were talking about how you really understand the students and kind of what their hangups are.
Won't be the same.
Like I feel like have to happen in person. And I think that's the major part that's going to be missing in the equation that I haven't quite figured out how to facilitate and work out next year if we are doing distance learning.
That part's going to be tough. If this had happened this year in October, for instance, God knows what we'd be doing. Mm-hmm. I can't not lower your grade from October. I mean, it's just a whole different paradigm. If we start out this way, that's going to be the hard part, is actually figuring out the kids. I'll increase my questionnaire, the scope of my questionnaire, but other than that, I won't have as much. Yeah,
and I think that rapport in a classroom is just so important, even as adults. The energy that we have with each other, and it saddens me that that piece missing. And if we don't return to the way classes traditionally are, I think that piece might be permanently, damaged or altered in a way that is never going to look like the way that as we know it,
I'm
right?
sending Vasquez and Abley a new meme now.
Joanne, would you like to ask about college?
What about it? What about college?
So do you guys think that juniors will have it easier or harder than 2020 in terms of college acceptances? Because the AP tests have changed and then they don't really need standardized testing.
Yeah, SAT's been like canceled for them. Like it's like optional to turn new scores now.
I'm just gonna tell you, I think I urge people to say, when everyone was like, hallelujah, get rid of the SATs, you know how UCs was saying, we're going to get rid of the SATs and then we're going to measure. I just think all those inequities and all those things are really unfair in terms of playing field. Guess what kind of help? Standardized testing is racist. Standardized testing is ethnocentric. Standardized testing is biased. But guess what? Test is for most people. If you want it to not be racist, you want it to not have those problems, you literally have tests for every single kid. There's no such thing as a non-standardized standardized test. You get rid of the standard. Some kids could at least, work really hard and do well on that standardized test and show that, okay, even in a poor district, a district that is struggling, that's ranked really low, but guess what? I took the same test as that private school kid and I did just as well or maybe even better. So you should accept me. You take that out and they're going to go, let's look at extracurriculars. Well, a kid who has resources can go to India and work in a hospital and intern at their uncle's, hospital. Does that make sense? Like all those things that make it unfair, that's not going to go away unless you measure kids differently. And I can't imagine them measuring, the college, those kids can have fake rowing pictures and they get to USC on a scholarship.
They're rich.
Right?
They're better than we are. Everyone knows
and so that's why I actually think it's going to be harder for kids to show through. And then the kids who, have resources are going to go, well, during, what I did, I made, I coded and this homeless shelter be able to function. Like the kids that have resources are going to really have these things to make them shine, and the kids who didn't, what's going to say it's like, oh, they did a grade 4 but they worked the whole time and they actually didn't do the work. Does that make sense? So I don't think, I think it's going to make it easier for some kids, and I think it's going to make it harder for other kids. I don't think getting rid of the standardized test is going to miraculously, because they're still going to measure you, they're still going to compare you. The things that they compare you, unless they get to interview every single kid and know every single kid and who they really are as people, guess what they're going to measure you by? Extrinsic value. Everything that is show offy, ostentatious, whatever that is what's going to get you into these schools. Does that make sense? So I just think you take the standardized test out and you're going to go, okay, that might, but I don't know what the measures are going to be. Does that make sense? I can't answer that question. I don't imagine it making it easier for kids who are disadvantaged. I think maybe it'll help some kids, but I always think about, like, I'm the kid that got stuck with affirmative action. It was harder for me to get into all the schools I wanted to go to because California still said affirmative action was okay. And I still supported it. I love the fact that when I went to Berkeley, it was diverse. There were all different races. Now you go there, like I go visit, friends that still live there. It's predominantly, the people look like Jason or me. They're either white folk or they're Asian folk. There's not a lot of diversity. It looks pretty much like Piedmont Hills with more white people. It's kind of like what it looks like. And so I'm sure Victor, you're going to be going to UCLA. You're going to probably see that similar landscape, right? And so that's something that I always kind of think about in terms of their measures, because I think if we don't make our society more fair and equitable, I don't think taking away one test, and I actually think taking the test is going to make it more difficult for some students to shine, to be honest.
I don't think a whole lot's going to change. They have to figure out who to take into college and who to reject, and they'll just pick a different subset of numbers that surround you in the cloud. If they don't have SAT or the whatever test we give, I forget what we're calling them now. So they'll figure some other way to, to figure out the academically motivated from not. So I don't think it'll make a lot of difference. My smarts will go to college, the motivateds, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So both of you guys have a lot of juniors in your class. Do you guys
Mhm.
think their views will change on how they spend their senior year?
I feel like they'll appreciate, if we do go back to normal, they'll definitely appreciate it more. You know? What do you think?
I think we're all going to, because it's almost unanimous, and all the kids I've talked to, it's certainly unanimous, and all the staff I've talked to. We miss going to school, and I'm tired of being, the most exciting time in my week, and I'm not joking, is my trips to Safeway to put the mask on and bring the sanitizer. I went to Costco the other day, and I actually, you can't leisurely walk up and down the aisles, but I looked at a couple extra aisles just for things I feel like buying, not bread and eggs and stuff. So I think the kids who come back next year, the seniors, I'm dreadfully sorry about lack of graduation, lack of prom, lack of all these rites of passage that I look forward to also. They're once in you guys' life. This is my 20th senior prom. This is my 20th graduation.
I bought a dress. I bought my dress already.
And it signifies to all of us teachers the end of the one more year of our lives and of our job, and our lives. But I think the juniors next year are going to come in with a teeny little bit of renewed, excitement about being around other people. And I don't think we'll be quite so snotty with each other for at least a little while.
Yeah, it'll last like 3 weeks. I give it 3 weeks.
Okay. Okay. We'll have a good August then.
Yeah. But I feel like I just feel so sad because I remember my college graduation and the excitement of that, and then working, and really like it was the moment that I kind of went from student to adult. And then my friends, one of my best friends, her son's graduating from Berkeley, and he's not going to have a graduation, and then I think about all my students who really, they are the first person to graduate high school in their family. They're going to be the first person to walk across that stage, and they worked hard for that. And then for that to be taken away, is so sad. So I really appreciate, and Mr. Dries knows more than me about this because he's department chair, is that the school, at least I'm getting emails, working really hard to think about how to give you guys a graduation or how to celebrate that, because they know that that's a really, big moment. And hopefully we can figure it out,
We have no idea at this moment.
Yeah. But they're trying, and I can appreciate the try, right?
Every other thing that has happened in you guys' life, we can look back and say, I remember that happened. We can even ask the old guys, I remember this happened. This is how we compensated for it. Oh, okay, cool. This has never happened. So we don't have a plan B on this. We're trying to figure out anywhere from Minecraft graduations to the drive-in theaters to,
oh my God. So
God knows.
Emmett for a drive. We just sat in the car and we drove around, and he was so happy just to kind of see people and cars,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Have you guys been driving around, or you just kind of stay home all the time?
Yeah, I drive around sometimes.
Maybe I'll take like an occasional walk outside just for some air, because it's like suffocating staying at home.
It is.
Okay. Okay. Now we'll go on our second break.
Welcome to Performance with Petey. I'm your host, Jose Flores Jimenez, and I will be reading a few written pieces submitted by students. Today, our first piece is a journal entry written by senior student Andy Doan. This piece can be found in the March issue of the Legend newspaper. The entry is titled, Birthday in Quarantine. Journal entry, March 17th. The sun was out today. It hasn't been out for the last several days, so it felt especially warm when I stepped out into the sunlight today for driving practice, its rays kissing my skin as if reassuring me that things will be okay. Birds were chirping too. Their songs filled the morning while I was replying to my first birthday wishes. Life will move on, in spite of us humans. These last 2 weeks have felt like a fever dream. I went to school and I floated through my classes and through the halls, hearing all the hysteria and anxiety, taking it all in and internalizing it. When I got home, the same panic was all over the news and social media. We're living in a very uncertain time, a very messy, very uncertain time, where the days are long and the future is an unknown. The world is not ending, it is simply slowing down, but for a society whose lives are seldom characterized as slow, the days have seemed infinitely longer. But we, like life, must move on. James Baldwin wrote in his novel, If Beale Street Could Talk, I hope that nobody ever had to look at anybody they loved through glass. For Tish, Baldwin's protagonist, her loved one was behind a wall of literal glass, in a prison visiting area. For us, on the other hand, our loved ones are behind the glass of our phones, bound by FaceTime but separated by miles in between. Today was my birthday. The Big 18, as many referred to it. I had many ideas of what this day would be over the past few years, but sometime over this past weekend, I realized all of my preconceptions would be whisked away because of this virus. I also realized something else. This break, and, by extension, this moment in history will be defined by looking through glass. The windows of our houses, the windows of our cars, the screens of our phones and computers. I stare into these forms of glass to see the barren road, the empty neighborhood, the eyes of my loved one, and to find solace. That was my 18th birthday, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I must move on. In this moment of history in particular, I am reminded of the final monologue in Tony Kushner's Angels in America. His play followed a cast of characters deeply affected by the AIDS epidemic, but I feel it also is applicable to this very uncertain time. Kushner wrote, "This disease will be the end of many of us, but not nearly all, and the dead will be commemorated and will struggle on with the living. And we are not going away. We won't die secret deaths anymore. The world only spins forward. We will be citizens. The time has come. Bye now. You are fabulous creatures, each and every one, and I bless you. More life." I know times like these are messy, and I know it is easy to submit to social media posts which exacerbate rather than inform, but the birds were chirping today. And someday, somewhere, somehow, we'll be able to bask in the warm sunlight again. Beyond glass, when the sun finally comes out on these cloudy, cloudy days. More life. End journal. Next, I'd like to share a piece that I wrote. This is a poem about hate and how we choose to deal with it. The piece is called A Man Got Married to the Sun. A man got married to the sun, having fallen in love with its light so fully. His heart brimmed with a passion for brightness, and so he got married to the sun. What becomes of a man that hates the darkness of a shadow on the day that the sun shines with fury? He will shrivel, wilt, and die in the heat, having neglected the shade. A mother makes a living in the shadows, having no other way to feed her young. In the shadows work was hard and hearts were empty, but it is in the shadows where she makes her living. What becomes of a mother that is stuck in a cave, that can see the light at the end, but in the light of the day becomes ashamed? She will remain hidden, unseen, and cold, and then she will learn to hate. A mild-mannered child is emotionless, knowing nothing about sides on which to sway. If ignorance is bliss, then this is paradise, but only for a moment, so they say. Unless... If that mild-mannered child were a man, who could distinguish a good shadow from the bad, who regardless of a tree's shape, size, or root's homeland, could take its branches' shadow's helping hand, then he could grow. If that mild-mannered child were a mother, then she could make her way into and out of rocks, then she could make ends meet for more than one, then to be there for her kids could become enough so that she may know that she is loved. Someone let this child know that hate is normal, though often our intentions it will stain. But that is no excuse to be immoral. Rather, it's the reason why love should be sustained. For what becomes of the child when mild-mannered becomes matured? Will the child fall to hate, or fall with love? Or will the child fall, as many of us do, in the realm of those that have no faith in that still strong-standing truth? It's the mild-mannered children that change the world. End poem. That's all for this week. Remember that you can get your writing read on air for Polly's podcast. Just loop mail Jose Flores Jimenez, grade 11, with your short story, short essay, poem, or song, and explain how you'd like it to be read. Remember, you can also record yourself reading or singing, and we will include it in the next episode. Now, for the rest of Polly's podcast.
Thinking about getting the
so,
pros.
okay. So it's been great talking to you guys, but we are unfortunately at the end of our podcast. So do you guys have any last minute things you guys would like to say?
We really miss you guys. I put out this thing on Piedmont's Twitter, which you obviously have never seen, about some pictures of us all holding up signs that I put in a cute little collage. It was my big activity for the day about how much first of all, we want you guys to be safe, but second of all, we actually miss coming to school and seeing you guys. You're actually Aberly and I discuss this on an almost weekly basis, and we have for the last 20 years, that when you tell people you're a high school teacher, they always think we deal with murderers and and stuff all day. I deal with you guys all day, kids exactly like you guys. It's the kids are the high point of this, that we really miss you guys. It's sometimes the adults in the job that are that are the pains in the butt, the Miss Lees and she can't hear me, right? It's you guys are the best part of our job, and we miss you. Long story short.
And same for me. I definitely miss the kids, and I miss kind of the touching in, like you guys kind of check in with me even though you're not in my class, just to kind of say hi in the hallways. And you guys all know I'm always coming into school with a lot of energy. I said, no matter how tired I am, as soon as I get into that classroom, I'm like ready to learn and I'm ready to teach. And I definitely miss that, and I miss the kids. And I think I'm concerned for many people because I think they're not equipped to be dealing with this. So some of it is just kind of this worry, sort of that sinking feeling of worry. But I know you guys are tough, and we're all going to get through this together. And I think one thing that is so promising and that has made me, really be touched is I love more, and I love harder, and I love tighter, even though I'm not holding onto people tighter, but I love tighter. And I know that as the human race, we love each other and we are getting through this together. And to see that is kind of beautiful. And I love you, Mr. Dries.
I'm just reading the news about lots of dumb people's decisions. So my love of humanity is not exactly peaking right now. From the top of our country all the way down to the activity. So.
Okay.
I guess any last minute comments you would like to say to the student body, or maybe like any advice for teachers in the future?
No.
Drink lots of water.
Stay hydrated. Stay inside. Stay hydrated.
Stay hydrated.
Okay.
Find things to do.
Find things to do. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for joining us and giving our community a better perspective on this topic. We really appreciate it. And yeah, we're done.
Okay. See you guys later.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.